evening and welcome back to another episode of What's So Funny, the show that probes the minds, the brains, the psyches of the people who make the funny. This week, that Canadian guy, Glen Foster, makes his What's So Funny debut. Only it's not his debut. Oh, he was on the radio, how many years ago? 4, 5, 6 years ago? Don't know. But it's not, for some reason, in the What's So Funny podcast archive. Don't know why. I'll look into it. I will get it up. But this one, tonight, this interview with Glen is fresh. A couple weeks ago, he was in town, headlining the new Yuck Yucks on Cambie Street, and I went up to his hotel room and chatted with him for an hour. And this particular hour that you will now hear, it went something like this. Glen Foster, how are you, sir?
I'm all right, sir.
Glad we could talk. It's been a while.
It has.
You know, I before coming down here today, I checked the archives, the What's So Funny archives, to see when the first and last time you were on the show. And you know what? That episode isn't up.
It isn't up?
I'll have to ask my webmaster if it was ever up, and if not, I will dig through the vault, sir, and I will put that on, and it'll be like finding $20 in your jeans, you know? People will go, hey, here's one from 2007. I think it was 2007.
2007? Holy smokes.
Yeah, 5 years ago.
Wow.
I don't know if that's the last time you performed in a club here.
Well, there hasn't been a Yuck Yucks here.
It's been 2 years.
It's been 2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So the last time I would have performed in a club here would have been Yuck Yucks at the old location. Or it could have been even, did you ever come out to New West to see me at Laugh Lines?
Probably.
Yeah, it might have been there then.
Yeah.
But no, it's been way too long overall, I'd say. But it's a nice new club, the Yuck Yucks.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what do you look for in a club? What makes it nice? I mean, you've certainly played your share of clubs over the years.
Sight lines, low ceiling, good location. It's I've talked about this to a number of people, comics and non-comics. Music works anywhere, right? You can pick up a guitar and sit on the street, and you know what I mean. Like it just doesn't.
You ever try that with comedy?
Well, exactly. At comedy, there's so many things. The size of the room, the shape of the room, the height of the ceiling. What's the audience been doing? Are they drunk? Are they too drunk? Are they not drunk enough? There's so many factors. You just wonder how it ever works.
I overheard, I think, you talking about this in Montreal, just for laughs. I forget the year. In some coffee shop, you were talking about all the little factors that go into what makes a show a success on any given night. Forget about the room.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The layout of the room, just on any given night.
Oh, sure. I mean, beyond the physics of the room, there's just so many variables. I guess that's what makes it interesting.
Have you figured it out yet?
No.
Say on a given night, you have an amazing show. Right? So you just go, well, that's par for the course. Now you go on another night and the show's not so amazing. Can you put your finger on why?
Sometimes. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's easy to put your finger on why you're like, well, these people were drunk when they came in, or big parties, big birthday parties, wedding parties, that kind of thing. Horrible for comedy. They always encourage those, they'll bring your group down. Groups are bad. Groups are bad for comedy because they become their own little dynamic and their own little pocket of, they may not necessarily be part of the whole room type thing. You're better to have, couples, small groups, that kind of thing. But big groups, they take on their own dynamics.
They're sharing their own laughs.
Right, and they kind of, take over the show kind of thing sometimes. Yeah.
Brent Budd, I think, said that that's part of the challenge is how you react to those situations.
Right. You can't do anything about it. It's not like,
So maybe in some case you go, yeah, it was bad group dynamics, but I could have handled it better. Is that what you're?
There is some, yeah. That yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
No, really, it's always the audience's fault.
No, it's not always the audience's fault.
Yeah,
I would probably take the blame myself more than I would ever put the blame on the audience in general. Like if a show doesn't go well, I will generally look at what I did wrong first before I would blame the audience, unless it's really obvious that they were just idiots. Right?
Yeah.
But I would generally say, well, okay, it didn't go right because I wasn't totally prepared to do this, or I was, somewhat scattered tonight, or had other things on my mind, or whatever. But
I can't figure out why. There's got to be a better system than dropping the checks halfway through a headliner
oh,
set.
I know
Because you're coming to see, pretty much, you're coming to see the headliner.
right.
The best act usually on a given night. And then halfway through, we're settling up here and everybody's talking to each other. How
Oh
much
yeah,
do I owe?
and then they're trying to do the math.
Yeah, is there a better way?
Well, is there a better way?
Because you got to get the crowd out.
But I mean, it depends on how you want to run your room, I suppose. In any, I mean, not just comedy rooms, but I mean, you sort of got to get the checks out. Otherwise, you have to put them out at the end of the night. Then you run huge risk of dine and dash, right? Or drink and dash, or laugh and dash in this case. So I guess they do that, put the checks out early for the benefit of the waitresses, really, because it's just too much bedlam if the show is over and you're trying to collect from people and people are getting up and getting out and you don't know who's paid and who hasn't, and Yeah. So I mean, it's the dynamics of running any kind of room rather than, it's unfortunate that the checks come out at a certain point, but there's really nothing you can do about it.
And I guess the headliner is usually the most experienced and better able to handle such situations.
Yeah, I mean, you want to have, once you notice that the checks are going out, then you know that anything you're saying for the next few minutes is just going to get lost anyway. So you might as well slide into something that's disposable or something that's surefire that they don't really have to pay attention to, or just comment on the fact that the checks are out, right?
So how have you're here in the Yuck Yuck second week of existence.
Mm-hmm.
Are there bugs that you've noticed that they got to work out, or how is it?
Well, they're new to running the room. I mean, we had a couple guest spots last night, second show. One guy went way too long,
Oh, there's no
long.
light there, is there?
No, there isn't, and that is part of it. But this guy is a pro. He's been doing it a while, so there's really no excuse. It was just pure stage hoggery. And I won't tell you the guy's name, but
on air anyway.
Exactly.
So, do you say anything after?
I did say something to him. I said, I really enjoyed your stuff, but you did twice the time you're supposed to do. It's a late show. We've already had one guest on. The show was 2.5 hours. It was over an hour and 15 by the time I even got to the stage.
And how did he take it?
He apologized, but he should know better. Anyone who's been doing this for any length of time should know that it's just good etiquette to go in. If you're going to do a guest spot, you go and you do the time you're supposed to do, and not more than that, and certainly not double that. And he closed his show 7 times. I swear, he'd say, "All right, well, I'm just going to tell you one more thing. Okay, just 2 more things, then I'm going to go. All right, I got 2 more things to tell you." Honest, I just kept sitting there going, "Well, are you leaving or aren't you?" And the guy was funny and everything,
right.
But it's very unprofessional,
sure.
And especially on a late show. Late show is the worst show of the week traditionally anyway. Late show Friday is the worst of the week because all of these dynamics that we're talking about. And one of the dynamics is people have been working, they've been up, they've been out all day. Maybe they've even been out drinking before they got to the club.
Probably, yeah.
They went somewhere else to drink before the show. Sometimes the second show people are people who couldn't get into the first show, so they're already a little on it. You know what I mean? So second show Friday really has nothing going for it. And traditionally, comics will tell you that's the worst show of the week. So to add extra acts and prolong the agony is silly. Pretty much, not everywhere, of course, but if I go down to an open mic or whatever, I walk in and they go, "Oh, do you want to go on?" Right? So
Glen Foster is here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to be all egotistical about it, but
and then you're going way over time. And
generally, I can get stage time where I want it. Right. So if I'm working out something for television or something like that, I'll just go and find every little open mic that I can find and just go in and do time, leave. But I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm very conscious because I've been in a position where you're just about to go on and some big shot headliner walks in and does 20 minutes or half an hour or whatever, and it's just there's no excuse for it. It's pure ego gratification. So, if you've done your 7 or 10 or whatever you're supposed to do, whatever you're working out for your TV thing. I mean, this particular guy was, I gather, going to be on some kind of showcase. Well, you're not doing 20 on your showcase. You're probably doing 7 to 10. So do your 7 to 10 and get off.
Can't wait to find out who that was. But you talk about these celebrity comics who come on, and you hear this a lot.
A few years back, was it, who was the comic who came in?
Dane Cook.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
I was at that show.
Right. So here's the thing now, and Dane Cook has a bad reputation for doing this sort of thing too. But I mean, if I was ever in a position where I was like a big superstar and I could just walk into any club and go on, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to be the headliner? Then let the headliner go on and do his, do a shorter set, and then you can close the night if you feel like doing an hour or whatever. But don't be an asshole. Don't go in saying you're going to do 15 minutes and then do 35, 40 ahead of the headliner when you're a big star who can do time anywhere you want, right? It's pure ego gratification. There's nothing else there.
That wasn't the case last night because he was a younger comic.
Actually not.
No.
Well,
Okay.
hard to tell sometimes.
Okay. And we were talking about comedy in Vancouver tonight. Last night, Jay Moore was in town. You're at Yuck Yucks. Ari Shafir is at the Mix. Tonight, we see Maz Jobrani's at the Vogue. I forgot Danny Boy.
Danny Boy is in too.
He's in town. He's playing the Center tonight and tomorrow night.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So a good night for good for comedy consumers, or is that too much?
Well, I guess it's good but how you can't go to everything, right?
True. Well, with the clubs anyway, I could go to one show on a Thursday, Friday, another one Saturday, maybe even two shows in a night.
That's true. Yeah. But some of these bigger shows, I mean, you'd be putting out some coin if you wanted to see every show, right?
I guess I forget about that.
I don't know what the ticket price at the
at
theaters.
The theaters, it's got to be anywhere from 40 to 100.
Right. So the club is probably half of that.
Yeah. But there's your value.
Yeah.
People, come
That's
on
right.
out to the clubs.
Plus also, as nice as it is to do theaters, and I've done a number of theaters, you can't touch a club, a good hot club.
True.
for a nice, intimate, sort of explosive atmosphere. I mean, you just can't get that in a big theater.
Yeah. Theaters must be nicer to play.
Yeah, they're nicer to play. They have their own dynamics. If it's a really big theater, you have to almost jump your own joke. Like you tell a joke, wait for the laugh to come in, like a wave kind of thing. And then you almost have to start telling the next joke before the laugh comes in, or it's weird on your timing.
That would take some getting used to, I guess.
It does
over
take
the
some
years,
getting
right?
used to. I mean, we're talking about a big, like Just for Laughs type thing,
Right, the big gala.
3,500 seat theater type thing.
Yeah.
Because when they're recording it, if you don't jump the laugh, it looks like you're hesitating, right? Even though you're just waiting for the laugh in that bigger room, right? So there are little tricks that you learn along the way.
Is it true you've done more Montreal galas than anyone?
No, it's not true.
Did I read that?
Mike McDonald has certainly done more. Mike did every single Just for Laughs from 1987, I think, to just a couple years ago. He was, and I think he may even come back now and then again. But in a row, I'm pretty sure in a row he did 87 to
20 years or something, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I mean, I've done, what have I done? 6 galas and one sort of special that they did, which was a Canada Day special. So, and that was hosted by Russell Peters. So that I don't count that one as a proper gala because it wasn't in the same big theater. So I've done 6 galas and one special at Just for Laughs.
But am I wrong? Did I read that somewhere? In your press? People say
not
that?
in my press.
Not your press, but somewhere.
But people do say that. Oh, but you know how people, they do exaggerate when they introduce comedians. They say, oh, he's done everything there is to do in comedy. Really? Isn't the David Letterman show something you could do in comedy? Isn't the Tonight Show something you mean all the Canadian credits?
And they will exaggerate, of course. I know, and a big pet peeve of mine, I used to hear a lot more than I do now. Some local who's maybe been at it for 6 months coming to the stage, and the host says, "Oh, they travel all around the country," and I'm going, "No, they don't. Don't build them up, because then somebody who maybe doesn't go to a lot of comedy will think they are reflective of somebody who's good enough to travel around the country."
But what are you going to say? Like, you got to say something to get, you can't just say, "This is third time on." And
why not?
Well, you can, but it does.
Here's a very funny comedian.
It does help. I guess it helps. And it's funny because depending on where you are in the world, like in Britain, they don't really do credits at all.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the States, I think they throw a lot more credits. And Canada, we don't have a lot of credits.
So he makes stuff up.
He's done clubs and colleges all over the country.
Have you done much in England?
Not a whole lot. Not for a while. I actually I didn't even renew my British passport. I had such a traumatic experience a few years back.
Tell me about it.
I did not even renew. Well, basically, I played a club in Newcastle where they were drunk from the get. Like, they were drunk to the point where here in Canada, in most places, if you served a person this drunk, you would lose your license for sure. But over there, that's the starting point. That's where they bring in these big stags and stagettes, and they were absolutely hammered. And I guess, I don't know, for whatever reason, they just took an instant dislike to me. And I had two of the worst shows I've had in my life in 30 years.
And
I had the manager tell me she'd seen amateurs do better.
Nice.
And refused to pay me. And I was just like, you know what? I've had some good shows in England too, and a lot of guys have done really well in England, but there's two Englands, There is a part of England that is just this medieval undercurrent of alcoholism and violence, and they go to the comedy club.
Wow. So that was enough to just.
I'd like to go back there again. I do
get back up on that horse.
Well, yeah, I do kind of have a love-hate relationship with the whole thing, but I have to renew my passport. I actually can. I had a passport, like an actual, because my father's Scottish.
Oh, there you go.
So it's not a big deal for me to, it is a big deal actually to renew a passport now. A British passport is somewhere in the order of $350.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and it all has to, and you can't even do it in Canada. It's done through an office in Washington, D.C. So I'd have to start the process all over again with birth certificates and everything else, because I completely let it slide, because I was like, I have no way I'm going back.
Is your material Canadian specific? A lot
of it is. A lot of it is.
Yeah.
But there are some jokes that aren't Canadian specific. I mean, I can be funny anywhere, but I think I'm funnier in Canada because I do have Canadian sensibilities and a kind of a handle of what's going on in the country. And I don't know if you know, but I'm doing a weekly interview spot on Sun News Network now.
I knew you had some affiliation with Sun News.
There's a show called Byline. It's a current affairs show, and it's on every night. And I do every week I do a Friday night just quick little what's funny this week interview kind of thing.
Yeah, and as you Fox News North.
Right. Well, Dennis Miller does the same thing on Fox.
On Fox, yeah.
Right?
So you're the Dennis Miller of Canada.
I guess you could say, yeah.
Now, he's taken some heat, of course, from the Liberals.
For being on Fox News.
For being on Fox News and for, his support of Bush and everybody.
Yeah, he's really, I don't know if he's really gone right-wing or always was right-wing.
Yeah.
But
well, I think he claims it was after the September 11th attacks.
Oh, really?
That sort of changed his mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but are you that conservative?
No, I'm more centrist, really, and sometimes
that's what I think. I mean,
I'm a little bit loony left on some things.
Yeah. So you will, when need arises, take on the Harper government as you did with their robocalling.
Yeah, robocalling,
like
and
right.
The thing I'm on the Harper government for now is this. I've been doing this on stage. Is this ad campaign that they're running for senior abuse, senior abuse awareness?
Tell me about it.
Senior abuse awareness commercials. All right, brought to you by the government of Canada, the biggest abusers of seniors in Canada. Right. Is it senior abuse to take someone's pension and run a fucking ad campaign? Is that senior abuse? Is that on your website? That's the other thing they say. They'll say, well, for more information on senior abuse, visit our website. If a senior can visit a website, they're not the ones who are going to be abused.
Right.
I've got this whole rant part of my act now where I'm just so against government advertising. It's not necessary. Shut up. Do your job. Don't the bit I've been doing is I say, I normally make a lot of jokes about I hate to tell a joke.
Right.
My
stone face.
Yeah, exactly. But the basics of it is I've started this new thing now that I call government style comedy. And that is where I don't actually tell any jokes. I just take out a bunch of ads to tell you how funny I am. Well, I have ADD. I'll tell you that before I forget. I actually have adult ADD. Have you even heard of it? I just got diagnosed because normally they get it when you're a kid. Well, when you're a kid, they can't wait for a kid to have ADD. Well, this one's displaying signs of an imagination. Drug him. But I have adult ADD. It's worse than ADD. Technically, it's not even ADD. It's like ADD, eh? So it's like extra stuff to have to think about before I can do any actual thinking. Oh, man. I'll tell you how I found out. I was reading an article about adult ADD. Well, I didn't read the whole thing. The TV was on. I think I made a sandwich. Oh, I love to eat. Oh, eating and sleeping are my two favorite. Oh, yeah, I like to eat just enough to get tired. Sleep just enough to get hungry. Keep a nice rhythm going there. You ever go to these all you can eat, all you can drink, all you can do is pass out on the beach? You wake up in a panic. Oh, shit, was I eating or drinking? I have so much to do today. Where are we in the schedule? Glasses or plates? How big are the circles in the sand? We have to go hang gliding. Not me. No way. I am deathly afraid of heights. There is no way I would go hang gliding. Heights and spiders are my two absolute freak out. Yeah, because they're creepy. Spiders. You never know where they are. And the way they attack their prey and just suck the life out of them. Like the government or ex-wives.
Can you do this on the Sun News Network?
Yes.
Yeah.
They actually ran that. I was shocked, actually.
Is it wrong to describe them as Fox News North?
You know what? They are pretty conservative. I gather they're quite right-wing in a lot of respects. But they also tell stories from different perspectives that just don't get told. In what they call they don't call it, what do they call it? They call it the consensus media. They don't call it the left-wing media up here, the liberal media. They call it the consensus media. Things, for example, like the Aboriginal issues in Caledon, Ontario, and some of the stories of people, like, a guy who gets arrested for walking down the street with a Canadian flag, and yet some Aboriginal guy nearly beats a guy to death, is practically stomping on his head, but because he's Aboriginal, there has to be special consideration in the OPP is there basically arresting anyone who's interfering with the Aboriginals who have illegally taken over the whole place, right? So you get more of those kind of perspective from the other side stories, And
are they taking an active role in, like Fox News, in championing a particular party? Like during an election, are they going to be?
There's not. I don't know. I don't know if they are doing that or not. But it seems to me that Ezra Levant, for example, has a show called The Source, and it is a great show. Mm-hmm. It really is. He brings up stuff that you don't even know where he gets the information half the time, but it's pretty bang on. He
makes it up, probably.
I don't think he makes it up, but anyway, I do enjoy. Politics aside or whatever, it's a weekly spot and it's national, right?
Oh, we get it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you do get it here. Yeah.
So you approached them?
No, they approached me.
Really?
Well, I kind of approached them because I had the news director out to see me when I did a show in Ottawa. And he had come out to see me, and then when they went on the air, they thought, all right, well, we need somebody for this,
Makes
weekly
perfect sense, yeah.
little spot of lightness in all the news.
Not a lot of Canadian comics are taking on news stories, are they?
There are here and
A
there.
lot? Yeah.
Not a lot, but there aren't a lot that are, for better or worse, perceived as conservative or right wing. It's a kind of an anomaly, really, because most people in
Right.
show business are left wing.
So you're saying you're perceived as
I
right
think
wing.
I'm more centrist, but I am perceived as right wing.
How do you like that?
How do I like it?
Do you combat it,
Well,
or do you just let it be?
I just kind of let it be because I do take. Obviously, I do take shots at the government. I don't care who's in charge. That's the person I'm taking shots at, whether
Yeah.
they be liberal, conservative, whatever. Right?
Well, I saw Dennis Miller. It was George Bush's second term, probably halfway through, and he was playing a casino here. And to his credit, a lot of people think he's just political now, but to his credit, he probably only did 5 minutes of straight politics.
Okay.
But to his discredit, after 6 years then of Bush in power, lots to make fun of, in those 5 minutes, he only attacked Democrats.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought, really? There's nobody you could make fun of.
There's nothing you
in
can.
the Bush administration.
Yeah, right.
So, but that's not something you would do then.
Well, here's a joke. I've been doing a joke recently where I'll say, "Or are there any Americans in the crowd?" Because I might want to do some political stuff here, and I don't want to confuse anybody, because we do have two kind of different systems. You have a president, and we have a puppet. So, but I think part of it too is it's hard to do jokes with a left-wing bent. It's easier being more critical. It's easier to criticize things, I think, from a right wing, why are my tax dollars paying for this? That sort of.
Because you don't look too deeply?
I don't know.
You don't know.
No, but I'm just saying this could be part of the perception of.
There are a lot.
Or maybe it's just the fact that I live in Oakville. Who knows?
There are. I don't know Oakville. Is that a?
It's a pretty conservative.
Okay. There are a lot of, as you say, left-wing comics who are political, and you're right. It sort of comes.
Well,
off...
look at CBC, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll take shots at the conservatives all day long, but they don't ever seem to take shots at the NDP. They don't seem to take shots at the Liberals.
But could it be that
my little joke is when you're listening to CBC, you'll notice that most of the sound comes out of the left speaker.
Could it be that they're the ones in power? So why take shots at the NDP?
But the NDP isn't in power.
Exactly. So why?
Oh,
take
I
shots
see.
At them?
Oh, I see. No, but even when we had liberal government, right? All the 22 minutes, all those shows, they weren't anywhere near as harsh with the liberal government as they have been with the conservative government.
Nor should they have been.
Why?
Because the conservative government is, conservative.
Yeah, I know, but see, you have a choice. Here's the thing: they all have their friends, they all have their corporate connections. It's just that the liberals seem to hide it much better.
I guess, but
right?
You're
They're a little more overt in the conservative camp.
The conservatives taking away funding for science,
right?
That can't be a good thing for this country.
Probably not.
Probably not. And other issues. I don't follow it quite to the extent you do, Glenn.
Well, apparently I don't follow it quite to the extent you do
because you don't know that. Well, that's because you're watching Sun TV. But no.
But on the other hand, cuts do have to be made.
Yeah, I know.
Right? So where are you going to cut? Right?
Well, the Liberals did cut the budget.
The Liberals. Okay, I am so tired of hearing how the Liberals balance the budget. You know how they balance the budget? They cut the transfer funds. Yeah, I can balance my budget too if I don't have to pay my bills.
I don't know what that means.
Well,
they balance the budget, right?
No one ever balances a budget. It's just tricks of accounting.
Okay, there was no deficit under Paul Martin.
Yeah, again, because he cut the transfer funds.
I don't know what transfer funds are.
It's the money that basically here's what happens in Canada when they collect the taxes, right?
Yeah.
They collect all the taxes. It all goes to Ottawa, which is silly because it's just going to go to Quebec. But And there's what transfer payments are, equalization payments
to the provinces,
right?
Yeah.
So those funds were cut under the Paul Martin government, And they downloaded a lot of uploaded, whatever, various services that municipalities then had to provide, that provinces had to provide, because the federal government, in order to balance the books, just didn't pay their bills.
Well, it works. What about what about taking? You're an artist, stopping the funding for arts in the country.
That's always a tough one for
Yeah.
me. It's always a tough one for me, because I'd probably say that I probably wouldn't even have a career if it wasn't for arts funding, if it wasn't for CBC funding, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, they waste an enormous amount of money on programming that no one watches,
True.
right?
True enough.
No one watches. There's no accountability. There is a CBC Entertainment Senate where if you do one thing, you seem to be appointed for life. Yeah, on the one hand, I'm very grateful that we had arts funding and so on and so forth. On the other hand, there's just a lot of money being pissed away on silly, silly things.
So the funding is just going down. It's not being eliminated. So
Actually, some
know.
funding is going. They are cutting the CBC's funding.
Yeah, I heard 700 jobs are being lost.
700 jobs.
Dylan Reimer's joke is they will all be taken over by Giancomeshi. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but you see, television in Canada is never about, is this a good program? Is this something people want to see? It's never about that. It's about, we need to get some jobs up in Yellowknife. So why don't we create a series that's based in Yellowknife or Saskatchewan, or why don't we, look at the whole, everything that's come out of the East Coast, 22 Minutes, Codco, all that was done through government funding, through the Atlantic Opportunities Fund. If you teach a man, sorry, what is it? If you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Yeah, if you teach a man to make television.
And now Mr. D is being shot in Halifax
right.
as well.
Yeah, when it could just as easily be shot anywhere else, but they need jobs in Halifax.
Well, is that wrong?
Is it wrong? It's not the way you should be running a television network.
Right. Had things gone another way for you, you might have been on This Hour Has 22 Minutes.
Not a chance, because the people who get onto This Hour Has 22 Minutes through the funding formula have to have some East Coast background.
Really?
Yeah.
Everyone?
There's quite a few of them. Now, the writers, I think that's a different situation.
Yeah, Erwin Barker wrote on that.
Yeah, that's
for
right.
Many years.
But believe me, that somewhere in the funding situation is some kind of East Coast connection. I don't think that Mr. D is in the same situation as 22, as Codco, as all those other shows. Right. And there's always a chance that I don't have my facts straight.
Always a chance.
Because that happens quite a lot.
So when people come to see you in a club, a lot of people just go to a club. Let's go see comedy. We don't know who's playing.
Right.
You come on there, and is it a fight? You're a veteran comic in the country, in a young person's game. I remember Erwin Barker, speaking of Erwin Barker, used to have a great line. He'd come out and say he feels like a dad coming down to the rec room.
Right.
And that just eased everyone up.
Right.
Is there sort of a perception or not maybe a perception from the crowd when they see you come on, they go, oh, here comes the man.
I think there is.
And how do you combat that?
I think there is. The best line, and had I no scruples, I would be stealing this line in a heartbeat. But the best line was a guy named Gary David. I don't know if you ever saw or met Gary David.
No.
Well, he didn't even start comedy till he was like 50-something, I think.
Oh, really?
And his opening line was he would come out and he would go, I know what you're thinking. Oh, fuck, he's old. If I'd known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself.
Yeah.
I do somewhat address that, I guess. Because you do kind of, there's two ways to play it. One way is just not mention it at all and hope that, just being funny is enough. But sometimes I think you do have to mention it, because They are young. I mean, who goes to comedy shows? Mostly young people. Who goes and does anything? Mostly young people.
That's right, anything.
Because they can, right? Because they don't have to get babysitters because,
So true. I was playing poker last night, talking to another friend my age, and he said, "Oh, we should get together some weekend." And I said, "Yeah, do you remember the time when we could just say, yeah, what are you doing tonight?
Tonight, right.
Tomorrow." Yes. And now it's like we're looking at our calendars for
it's ridiculous.
2 months in advance.
I have a couple friends from high school, and geez, we just got together a few weeks ago, and it had been like a year since. And these are guys that I hung out with every day, every weekend, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it just comes a point where you just, a year has gone by and I haven't seen these guys in a year, seriously?
So there's that perception, I'm noticing it as I get older, where, we're the same person we always were in our head, yet people are viewing us as, oh, there's the old guy.
Right, exactly. Oh, yeah, it is not a good feeling to be the oldest guy in the room.
It's not, is it?
And no, it's not. And you do feel like you have to kind of, reach out and relate to them, I suppose, or find a common ground or whatever. Or, like I say, just ignore it. Just, don't mention it at all. And I've done this joke a couple times. I think it's a mixed reaction, I suppose, but it's a real good, to me, it's a good analogy of what you're talking about is sometimes I'll walk into a room or a bar or whatever, and I'll go, holy cow, there are a lot of really hot oh, hang on a second. They're just young.
Yeah, I guess there's that, yeah. I remember, I've always been a jazz fan. And now that I'm as old as I am, people go, yeah, well, that's about right. He's an old guy who likes jazz.
Right.
And I always go, no, I always liked it. And I was the odd young guy who liked jazz. Because people my age don't like jazz.
Right.
But now it just fits, So
I'm the same with blues.
Yeah.
I like blues, right? And I've always liked blues. Well, not always, but,
yeah.
And, I mean, those are good musics to be into if you...
When you're a little older.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you fit right in then,
and so now I'm out of touch old guys. I was always out of touch. You can't just pin that on me being old, right? If I forget something, people go, oh, well, you're getting old. I've always forgot things. I've always liked to nap in the day.
Right.
Even when I was 25.
Right.
That's not me being old. That's me being me.
That's what I'll be doing when this interview is over. I'll be napping.
Aren't you glad that this interview's taking place on a nice, beautiful Vancouver...
crappy pissing rain.
Spring day.
Pissing rain Vancouver day.
What do you normally do when you're on the road?
It depends where you are, right? Yeah. Because sometimes they've got you in places that are just so isolated from... If you rent a car or whatever, you've got some freedom. But, if you don't get paid a big pile of money in Canadian showbiz, especially at the club level... So very often you're kind of stuck where they put you if you're in a hotel that's way out in the outskirts kind of thing, because a lot of comedy clubs aren't necessarily downtown,
right?
Depending on what city you're in, right? Some of them are out in the suburbs type thing. So you could be in a hotel in the suburbs, miles from anything.
In January.
Yeah, exactly.
In Alberta.
Exactly. Well, okay. For example, the club we used to play. It's something else. It was a Yuck Yucks, but it's not there. So it was in Calgary, not quite in the outskirts, but outskirts enough that it was a good 25-minute walk to the closest mall, which is not a horrible thing in the summer, but in Calgary in the winter, on the open, wide open areas, which just crazy cold, right? But if you're not making a lot of money, you certainly can't be cabbing it everywhere. You can't be, especially the young guys, if they're under 25, they certainly can't rent a car, right? So, I mean, it's...
And before internet.
Right.
Then what do you do?
I
mean, at least now you can while away the time.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, there is no shortage of things to while away the time.
Yeah, you're out walking and freezing your kneecaps. And then having permanent damage.
I mean, it's nice, Vancouver here. I'm in a hotel downtown. If it was a nicer day, I'd go out and walk around. I like to walk around, especially places like Vancouver. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to walk out. There's no point.
No, that's why I'm here. Hey, I don't know if you've read about this, but no doubt you have something to say on it. And if not now, in the future, I just read the other day that, our famous BC Human Rights Tribunal.
Oh, is this still going on?
No, not the Guy Earl
Oh,
case.
not the Guy Earl.
There's
a new one.
A new case coming out.
Oh, great.
Toronto Star has written about it. I think it just came out a couple days ago. Anyway,
Okay.
there's two BC people who are going to the BC Human Rights Tribunal. They're albinos.
Uh-huh.
And I guess they're taking Earl's Restaurant there because they want the albino rhino beer taken off the menu. It's a serious health issue. And so they shouldn't be naming their beer so flippantly.
But that's ridiculous. There is an albino rhino, isn't there? Like, isn't there such a thing? Is there a real zoological species called an albino rhino?
You may be right.
I think there is.
I know there are animals that are called albino, whatever they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just a medical term, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, oh, really? This has gone to the human right?
Well, from the newspaper articles, I read that they're taking it to the Human Rights Tribunal. I don't know if they've accepted it or how that works. But
We have to get rid of these tribunals, these kangaroo courts that it astounds me. They completely operate almost outside the law. The rules are completely different for them than they are in any other legal proceedings. If they come after you, they come after you with the full weight and power of the government and money and budget, and you have to defend against this. It's completely unfair, and there doesn't seem to be any recourse. Like, how did this whole thing even get? I mean, I would like to think that in 2012, I mean, yes, there must be. I'm sure there's racism. I'm sure there's discrimination, but I would like to think that there's less of it. And I would like to think that in 2012, people aren't being turned away from jobs and accommodation because of their skin color, because of their ethnicity, because of their whatever, right? I gather some of that must still go on, so perhaps we still do need some form of human rights tribunal, whatever. But all the other nonsense that they get involved in, they should just be shut down completely. Their mandate needs to be...
It cheapens real human rights.
It really does.
Abuses.
It really does. They need to either shut them down completely or severely restrict their mandate. And I don't think any government will, because I think this is the tool that the government uses to keep critics in line.
Well, now that you know about it, I expect you to Google it, and I expect to see some material tonight.
About the albino rhino.
Yeah. I was interviewing Mark Breslin recently, and he said, I asked him about the early days of Yuck Yucks and people getting up and walking out. They had never heard this kind of uncensored material. And I said, well, is it worse now in the politically correct era? And he said that he thinks that's past. And
the politically correct era?
Yeah, sort of like people getting offended over, comedians' words on stage. And I don't know if it really has passed.
I don't think it's passed.
Yeah.
I think it's gotten worse.
It may be on the upswing now.
I think it's gotten worse. I think, as I say on stage, I think we're at the point now where we get offended on behalf of other people. We're so conditioned as to what should offend us, and as I say on stage, well, I'm not offended personally, but I believe someone else might be. So as a Canadian, I don't think I should laugh at that.
But there is something to that, though.
There is something to that.
No, I mean something okay with that.
Okay with what? What, being offended on behalf of other people?
Yeah. Well, personally, I don't quite understand what offended really means to me. But I could see a comedian doing something on another group that may be completely wrong and distasteful, and we might agree on that. And I would think that guy shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
Or it's not funny. So isn't that kind of what you're talking about? Somebody saying, well, I don't feel offended.
A little bit. I think it's more about the pressure of, for example, if I even say Asian, for example, that just right there, as soon as I say that word, it's like, he said, so
you're not one.
So they're right on they're on edge now. Oh, what's he going to say? What is, what I mean?
Yeah. So
there are certain trigger words, I guess, that get people ready to, I guess what it is we're almost pre-offended. You know what? Before I'm actually offended, I'm preparing to be offended. Right? So even if I'm not offended, I might be a little bit offended just by the topic matter.
Do you get those discussions after some of your shows? On the way out, people come up to you and go, hey, that's...
Very rarely.
Yeah.
Very rarely. It has happened where people have said, I was offended by this or that or the other thing. But generally, I try to deliver things is my whole thing is, if it's not with malice and hatred, you should be able to make fun of anything, right? And if it's done the right way and delivered the right way, and it's all meant to be in fun, I don't see why anyone would have a problem with it. But that's me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Like I say, I'm not quite sure when people say they're offended what that really physically feels like.
It depends on the
or
person
emotionally
too.
feel like.
It depends on the person too, and it also depends on the cultural background and everything else. I mean, look at what offends people in other parts of the world.
Sure.
You know, some things, and they just outright lose their shit over things where we go, really? Really? That's what you burn down a town for? That? You know? That kind of stuff.
I tend to think if somebody said something against me or my people, I don't know if I would use the word offend. I would just think, well, they're an idiot. I would turn it back on them. They're not funny, or
And
they're
who
an
are your
idiot.
people, Guy?
Yeah, exactly. Well, French and Scottish.
Oh, right, of course.
Canadians, right?
Guy.
Yeah. So, or I might recognize that that's a superbly crafted joke,
Right.
and go with it.
Well, see, that's what I like to think. I like to think that whatever the subject, whatever, that you should be able to separate the humor from the horror, right? If you laugh, that's the test, if it's funny or not, right? Don't laugh and then go, oh, but wait a minute, I don't like the subject matter, or once you laugh, you've made your decision. That was funny, right? All your rest of it is just afterthought.
Right.
In fact, my favorite jokes are the ones that are like so on the line of, is that funny or offensive? You know, those are my favorite jokes.
Just because of the reactions you get.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you haven't been able to turn from rant to funny rant? That's what we were talking about, some of the liberal comedians who rail against conservatism. Some of the problems I have with them is that it's too preachy. They haven't found the funny in it yet. They care too much.
This is actually, it's a conundrum I'm having as well, is when did comedy clubs become the place where, the serious topics get discussed?
When you show up.
Well, yeah, but but it's not just me. There's other comics as well.
Yeah.
And you wonder sometimes, and the way I phrase it is, I'll say, and I feel I should apologize because I know people come to comedy clubs to forget their problems. And here I am on stage talking about the news and all these horrible things going on in the world. But technically, you not come to a comedy club to forget my problems. I do struggle with that sometimes because the jokes I want to do are about the things that bug me that are going on in the world. But I'd probably just have a much better show if I just did jokes about dogs and cats and television, and you know what I mean? Like, just not stuff that you don't necessarily have to think about, but you just wonder if you're doing the job, if you're bringing up, because on one hand you think, okay, well, if I tell a joke about X, then I'm kind of diffusing it. On the other hand, you think, well, if I hadn't mentioned it in the first place, I wouldn't have to diffuse it, would I?
True.
Right?
But you're usually able to find the funny in these situations. So whether I agree or disagree with your take on it,
right,
I'm able
but
to laugh
you're right.
at it.
I do see some comics where I go, this is preachy.
Right.
This is not funny necessarily.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
just
everybody
really preachy.
kind of agrees. And,
right.
And so they're maybe laughing because, yeah, he said it. But
right.
Where's the joke?
Exactly. Where's the joke?
And so are there any topics like that for you where you have a strong feeling about something, but you just haven't yet been able to put your finger on writing a good bit about it?
I think abortion would be the best example of the hard topic to make a joke, because the minute you say abortion, you right away open up such a kettle of fish that it had better be one fucking funny joke, because you've already got people so on edge just saying it,
right.
Just
waiting to hear your take on it.
I guess so. Yeah. And, there are certain topics, certain words, certain things that set off certain groups of individuals that could be downright dangerous, probably, to make a joke about.
Right.
I'm talking physically dangerous, You
get that in comedy, too.
Well, I think you do. I mean, certainly as a white guy, I got to stay away from the N-word. But,
But that's common sense.
Well, that's
right?
common sense, exactly. But there's more and more words. The M word.
The M word. Let me think. What's the M
It's
word?
a name. It's a name of someone you can't make fun of or make a cartoon of.
So yes, and you've always had that, right? I mean, just personally, whether it's a societal thing or not, you've sort of had topics where you just know common sense. I won't touch this.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you can and make it funny,
Then
to me that's the holy grail right there.
that's
if
what
you can
search
if you
for.
can find a very sensitive topic and tell a very funny joke about it and get people to laugh beyond the horror, then to me that's you got something.
Well, up till recently, I was actually doing a lot of work on cruise ships, but that's kind of dried up now. That captain, though, that captain, that Italian captain, Captain Crunch, as I like to call him. Oh, just kill me the excuses. That was my favorite part. Oh, no, it was dark and I fell in the lifeboat and then the oars started rowing by themselves. Oh, no, I was testing the lifeboat to make sure it was safe for the other passengers. Oh, man, the excuses. Good thing this happened in Italy, huh? Otherwise, it'd be like, me no speaking English, boom, 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 I know what happened, she's sinking, this is not my uniform, who put this on me? This is not...
Hello, this is Gilbert Gottfried, and you're listening to What's So Funny on CFRO 102.7 FM, and it's also on podcast in iTunes. But I wouldn't pay attention to the show on anything it's on. If it was right in front of me, I wouldn't be listening or watching or paying attention.
You must enjoy doing the debaters. You've done a few of them, haven't you?
I do enjoy the debaters. I think it's a great show. I like it better on radio than television.
Yeah, it hasn't quite pulled it off.
It's hard to do in radio. I mean, you can have notes in front of you. You can, nobody cares how you're dressed. You don't have to worry. But in television, there's so much more to worry about the shots and who's crossing in front of who and which camera should be on, and live audience is more difficult to do in a television situation than it is in a radio. So, but it's a great show.
Yeah, and it's good for your chops.
Oh yeah, I've come up with stuff doing the debaters that I end up using in my act.
Perfect. How many have you done?
Debaters? 8 or 10, I think.
What's your record?
I think I'm more wins than losses. But no, it's not like a staggering difference one way or the other. It's not. It's not like a 10-0 or anything like that.
When you lose, does it get to you? It's just for fun.
It's just for fun.
But
I've lost some. Yeah, some of them get to me, and they get to me because I've lost them for no good reason. I've lost them because, for example, I was debating the merits of plastic bags in Vancouver.
That was here, yeah.
Right? Well, doesn't matter how funny you are or what, The
audience has decided before
they've already decided before, exactly. And there was another one about, they always seem to pick me to be the guy to be against anything good.
Well,
like bicycle. There was one about bicycles versus cars, and of course I'm for the car. And there was one about, I don't know. They just pick me. I'm just like devil's advocate, I guess. That they.
Do young comics come up to you seeking advice?
No one's really seeking advice, I don't think.
Words of wisdom. Do you take any under your wing?
I have.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, actually, for a number of years, I ran an open mic at Jeff Healy's club.
Oh, really?
In Toronto. And there's a few guys that I had put on there that I see are doing good things now.
And what kind of advice would you offer them? Because they're obviously doing different things than you're doing.
Well, I guess it's stuff that's glaringly obvious to me that it might not be to them. For example, like one of the worst habits comedians have, young comedians, I suppose, is the general rule is when you get to the punchline, shut up, right? But a lot of comedians get to the punchline and then they feel like they got to tag something else onto, you know what I mean? And it's like sales. as soon as you put the pitch out there, shut up. The next guy to talk loses, right? So sometimes
they can give their tags after the audience.
Well, but sometimes they kind of put the punchline in the middle of the sentence and run on beyond it type thing. So as a veteran, I can look at this and go, the funny part is here, so you need to rearrange this sentence so the funny part comes at the end, right?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Or it's hard to tell.
Then it must be nice to see them try it and see it succeed and go.
Yeah, well, very often, but like for example, I'll see someone tell a joke, and I can't think of an example right now, but I'll see them and I'll go, well, there's a funny idea there, but you're not quite putting it out the right way. Like, I know what you're trying to get to here, and I think if you rearrange the words or whatever, you can. And another thing that I find every once in a while is I'll see someone do a joke that is maybe a horrible joke, right? When I mean horrible, I mean about a horrible topic or whatever. You can do those kind of jokes and by separating yourself from it. Like you could say, instead of saying, I can't think of a good example right now, but instead of, you saying, well, I did this horrible thing, ha, 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 you could say, I saw this guy on the street and he did this horrible thing. Right? So there's little tricks to distance yourself.
How
you frame it, exactly. Yeah. So I guess if that could be the advice that I would give people is how to frame things, how to rearrange things, how to structure a set. Sometimes people come out and they've got, their strongest jokes right up front, and then they peter out, and you got to be like that. I basically learned set structure from rock and roll, like going to concerts. That's how you learn set structure, right? Because open big, close big, do whatever you want in the middle.
Do your new stuff in the middle.
Exactly.
Stuff nobody wants to hear.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
That's a line that I've actually taken from the debaters, and I do use in my show now. It's about going to see classic rock bands, right? And here's something you never want to hear at a classic rock concert. All right, this is one from our new album. You hate to heckle your favorite bands, but it has to be done, right? It has to be done, but in a nice way. It's a rest on your laurels. Stop growing as an artist.
Yeah, so true. One thing that when I hear a comic attribute a joke to a friend or something they've overheard, I always go, why aren't you saying that you said, or why aren't you presenting it like you said it? Because now it's like, well, you're just ripping off your friends.
Right. Well, that's another framing thing, isn't it? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you make yourself the center of that? Sometimes they do that too. They'll tell a story in a third-party way. And I'm like, you can just tell that about you, right?
Yeah. Maybe there's too much honesty now in the new wave of comedy.
Maybe. Now,
have you noticed anything?
I mean, there obviously was an evolution along the way. People went from "Take My Wife, Please" jokes in vaudeville to more Carlin-esque style, more Seinfeld observational type. So I mean, there are obviously evolutions along the way, but I think people develop their own styles, and there's no one particular style, I think, that comes out of any given era. But maybe, I don't know.
So when you're going out to the open mics now and seeing all the 20-somethings up there trying out their bits, you're optimistic about the future of stand-up? Is it pretty much the same as when you were starting out?
No, it's not the same at all. First of all...
How is it different?
Well, first of all, they're just... I mean, it's so hard to get stage time now.
Oh, really?
I mean, when I started out, and the guys I started out with, there were only 10 of us, and we worked every night. Right now, there's guys who are, desperately trying to get 5 minutes a week kind of thing, and sometimes even less than. I mean, there's
a lot more rooms, but then a lot more comics.
But they're not, though, and there are a lot more comics. And I mean, there's other opportunities now that exist that didn't exist before. YouTube and all these different social networking. I mean, the tools exist now for you to make yourself famous. The problem is there's 50 million other people trying to do the same thing, right? So you get lost in the clutter type thing. But it's all about stage time, and the only place to get better at comedy is on stage.
You've always been at the forefront of getting a website. All the
Oh,
social
I've
media.
been totally left in the dust. Totally left in the dust. I was one of the first comedians to have a website, but I was really slow getting on YouTube, Facebook. I think I've been on a few years now. Twitter. I tweet once a week, or it depends on what. I'm not, firing stuff off all day long kind of thing. But the more you do it, the more followers you get, and so on and so forth. But it just becomes another damn thing. It's like, okay, so now I have to update my webpage, and I have to update Facebook and Reverb Nation, and I have to, if you have a Tumblr account, or it's just, and not being the most organized administrative type in the first place, it's just another damn thing to fall behind on.
Where's your team?
Yeah, well,
your Facebook fan page is good. I mean, you put audio clips up there.
Again, they're here, there. I mean, I've got like 40, 50 clips on the web on connected somewhere through YouTube, through my thatcanadianguy.com page. There's stuff on Facebook. There's stuff. It's just all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. But
so people can find you.
Oh, I'm very findable.
Thatcanadianguy.com.
If you just go to Google and type in That Canadian Guy, I'll be the first thing up. Yeah.
Good. Well, Glenn, it's a pleasure. I hope we could see you more frequently now that we have a club in town.
I hope so.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.